The Galactic Council had faced many threats, but none like this. The Zorathians, a race known for their unparalleled aggression and unmatched ferocity, had declared war on the Council. Each species was called upon to send their strongest, their bravest, to defend the galaxy against the unstoppable horde. For most races, this was an easy task. They had warriors, soldiers, and champions ready to fight. But for Earth, things were different. The humans had long been seen as the weaker species of the Galactic Council. Their technology lagged behind, their warriors lacked the size and strength of other races, and their history was filled with stories of retreat rather than triumph in battle. Worse yet, the humans had developed a reputation for cowardice among the more warlike species in the Council. Despite their advancements in diplomacy, trade, and culture, they were never the first to enter a fight. As the Council deliberated, a call went out to every planet. Every species was asked to send their finest to the front lines. The humans, having been shamed for their perceived weakness in the past, stood at a crossroads. Would they once again step aside and let others fight their battles, or would they send their soldiers to face almost certain death? In the halls of Earth's leadership, the decision weighed heavy. The general public, fearful of the Zorathians, hesitated. The Council's military advisors had all but given up on the humans, but one group, often looked down upon, made a stand. The human volunteers, those who had always been labeled as cowardly or unfit for battle because of their aversion to violence, were the first to step up. Among them was Lieutenant Maria Evans, a tactical genius who had never seen a battlefield, and Corporal Jackson Lee, a logistics expert who had avoided conflict his entire life. They weren't soldiers by the Council's standards. They didn't crave the heat of battle, and they valued strategy and survival over brute strength. But they were determined to prove that humans had more to offer than others believed. The Galactic Council was in disbelief when Earth submitted its response. "You're sending them?" The representative from the Trigger race scoffed, his voice echoing across the chamber. "This is no time for half-hearted measures. We need warriors, not those who will flee at the first sign of danger." But Earth stood firm. "They are the ones who volunteered," President Avery Black replied. "We cannot send those who do not wish to fight. These are the ones who have chosen to defend our planet, our species, and the galaxy. Judge them as you will, but they will stand beside your finest." And so, the cowardly humans were sent to the front lines. First contact. The vast expanse of space stretched out before them as the human fleet approached the Zorathian-controlled sector. Their ships were not designed for direct combat, at least not in the traditional sense. Instead, they were equipped with advanced sensors, strategic cloaking technology, and automated drones capable of quick repairs. The humans had no intention of engaging in hand-to-hand combat with the Zorathians, for they knew they would be outmatched. Instead, they aimed to fight smarter. Lieutenant Evans stood on the bridge of the Solstice, the flagship of the human contingent. Her fingers danced across the holographic display as she monitored the incoming Zorathian fleet. The enemy ships were enormous, bristling with weapons and armor. "We can't match them ship for ship," Evans muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "But we don't have to." Corporal Lee, seated beside her, nodded. "The others think we're cowards because we don't want to fight head-on. But that's not cowardice. It's survival." Evans smiled slightly. "Let's see if we can show them what cowardice really looks like." The first wave of Zorathian ships roared towards the human fleet, but Evans had anticipated their movements. Instead of meeting them in direct combat, the humans activated their cloaking systems and dispersed. The Zorathians, confused by the sudden disappearance of their enemy, fired blindly into the void of space. "Deploy the drones," Evans ordered. Tiny, agile drones emerged from the human ships, darting through the chaos of the battlefield. Each one carried a small payload of explosives, strategically targeting weak points in the Zorathian ships. Explosions rippled through the enemy fleet, causing confusion and disarray. The humans didn't need brute force. They used their intelligence and adaptability to turn the tide of battle. The turning point. News of the humans' tactics spread quickly across the galaxy. Many were shocked by their ingenuity. Others were dismissive, claiming it was a fluke, a one-time trick that wouldn't work again. The Zorathians, humiliated by their initial defeat, prepared for another assault, this time determined not to underestimate their cowardly opponents. But Evans and her team were always one step ahead. In the weeks that followed, the humans continued to deploy their unorthodox tactics. They used the terrain of space to their advantage, ambushing Zorathian patrols, disabling their supply lines, and using guerrilla warfare to chip away at their seemingly invincible enemy. With each victory, the humans gained more confidence, and their allies in the Galactic Council began to see them in a new light. Yet the humans were not without their losses. There were moments when their plans failed, when the overwhelming might of the Zorathians seemed unstoppable. But even in the face of defeat, they adapted. They learned from their mistakes and grew stronger. For the first time, the galaxy began to understand that bravery wasn't always about charging into battle with weapons drawn. Sometimes, the bravest thing one could do was to step up when others wouldn't, to face an enemy not with raw strength but with determination and creativity. The final stand. The climax of the war was fast approaching. The Zorathians, desperate to crush the humans once and for all, launched a full-scale invasion of the Galactic Council's core worlds. The Council's military forces were spread thin, and it seemed that defeat was inevitable. But Evans and her team had one last trick up their sleeve. As the Zorathian invasion force closed in on the Galactic Council's core worlds, panic spread across the Council races. The Triggers, known for their unshakable confidence, began to waver. Even the mighty Villarn, a species of war-hardened behemoths, started to doubt their chances against the relentless Zorathians. But Earth, and the cowardly humans, remained calm. Lieutenant Maria Evans, now recognized across the galaxy as a tactical genius, stood in front of a holographic map of the Milky Way's central sector. The Zorathian fleet had mobilized in overwhelming numbers, and the Council's forces were spread too thin to counter a direct assault. "This is where they want us," Evans said, her voice steady as she gestured toward the map. "The core worlds are a trap. If we try to defend them head-on, we lose." Corporal Lee, still by her side, narrowed his eyes. "So what's the plan? We can't just let them take the core." Evans smiled, a glint of determination in her eyes. "No, we don't. But we also don't fight on their terms." Evans had learned long ago that the Zorathians thrived on direct confrontation. They were built for it, massive, brutal warriors who reveled in the chaos of open combat. But she had something they didn't expect: subtlety. "We'll lure them away," Evans said, her voice low but confident. "We'll make them think we're retreating, but we'll take the fight to a place where their strength is useless." Chapter 5. The Lure. The plan Evans devised was bold, and to most Council species, it seemed like another act of cowardice. The humans pulled their ships from the core defense lines, falling back into the outer systems. To the Galactic Council, it looked like a retreat, a tactical withdrawal that would give the Zorathians the opening they needed to strike. But it was all part of the plan. Evans and her team had identified a region of space that was notoriously difficult to navigate, an asteroid field known as the Tangle. It was a maze of rock, debris, and ancient shipwrecks, and any large fleet trying to move through it would be torn apart. The Zorathians would never expect the humans to make a stand there. It was too dangerous, too unpredictable. But unpredictability was exactly what the humans excelled at. "The Tangle," Corporal Lee said as he looked over the map. "They'll never see it coming." Evans nodded. "We can't outfight them, but we can outthink them. They'll chase us, thinking we're fleeing. But once they're in the Tangle, they'll have no idea what's waiting for them." The Zorathian High Command fell right into the trap. Seeing the humans pulling back, they assumed the Council was finally breaking under pressure. They ordered their fleets to pursue, pushing deep into the outer sectors. Their thirst for battle blinded them to the danger that lay ahead. Chapter 6. Into the Tangle. As the Zorathian fleet entered the asteroid field, their massive ships struggled to maneuver through the tight spaces. The humans, on the other hand, had smaller, more agile vessels designed for hit-and-run tactics. Lieutenant Evans and her fleet navigated the treacherous terrain with ease, slipping through the asteroids like shadows. All ships, hold position, Evans ordered as they neared the heart of the Tangle. The human fleet was silent, hidden among the debris. The Zorathians pressed on, unaware of the trap that was about to be sprung. When the bulk of the Zorathian force was deep within the field, Evans gave the signal. Now. Hundreds of drones shot out from the human ships, darting through the asteroid field at incredible speed. Each drone was equipped with precision explosives, targeting the Zorathian engines and weapon systems. Explosions rippled through the fleet as one by one, the massive warships were crippled, unable to maneuver in the tight confines of the asteroid field. The Zorathians, who had always relied on brute strength, were now trapped. Their ships were too large to retreat, and every attempt to fire on the human fleet only resulted in more damage as the asteroids shifted and collided with their own ships. Evans watched as the enemy fleet crumbled before her eyes. "They underestimated us," she said quietly. "They thought they could break us with force alone." Corporal Lee chuckled. "And now they're stuck in a box they can't break out of." The aftermath. The victory in the Tangle was a turning point in the war. The Zorathians, humiliated by their defeat at the hands of the cowardly humans, retreated to regroup. For the first time in their history, they had been outmaneuvered, outsmarted, and outwitted by a species they had long considered weak and insignificant. The Galactic Council, too, was forced to reevaluate their views on humanity. What had once been seen as cowardice was now recognized as a different kind of bravery, one that valued strategy over brute force, intellect over aggression. But the humans were not done. The war was far from over. The Council's new ally. With the Zorathians licking their wounds, the Galactic Council held an emergency meeting to discuss the next steps in the war. Representatives from every major species gathered, and for the first time, Earth was treated with respect rather than disdain. President Avery Black sat at the head of the human delegation. The other council members, even the warlike Triggers, looked to her with newfound admiration. "The humans have proven themselves." The Villarn representative rumbled. "They may not fight like us, but their methods have saved us all." President Black inclined her head. "We are not warriors in the traditional sense, but we are survivors. We adapt. We find ways to win, even when the odds are against us." The Council agreed to support the humans' strategy moving forward. No longer would they rely solely on brute strength to face the Zorathians. They would use tactics, intelligence, and precision, the same methods that had brought humanity victory. The day of the Zorathians' final assault arrived with an ominous silence. Across the Galactic Council's homeworld, fleets were preparing for battle. The Council's forces had been consolidated, united under one banner with Earth at its strategic helm. The humans, once seen as outcasts, now stood as key players in the defense of the galaxy. Evans sat in the command chair of the Solstice, her gaze fixed on the tactical display in front of her. The Zorathian armada was closing in, an endless wave of ships darkening the stars behind them. "Here they come," Corporal Lee said, watching the sensors. His voice was steady, but the tension in the room was palpable. Evans nodded. "Remember, we don't need to beat them with firepower. We just need to outlast them. Every second they waste trying to break through our lines is another second we're closer to victory." The human fleet was positioned at the heart of the defense, surrounded by the Council's ships. They had been tasked with coordinating the overall strategy, using their superior tactics to guide the various species in the fight. As the Zorathians made contact, the battle erupted into chaos. The sheer size of the enemy fleet was overwhelming, and for a moment, it seemed as though they might crush the defenders through sheer force alone. But Evans' tactical genius quickly came into play. "Redirect fire to their flanks," she ordered calmly. "Force them to overextend. Let them think they're breaking through." The Council's ships followed her commands to the letter. The Zorathians, driven by their thirst for conquest, pressed forward, throwing more and more of their forces into the center of the battlefield. But as they overextended, the humans and their allies struck at their exposed sides, crippling their momentum. For hours, the battle raged on. The Zorathians, despite their ferocity, found themselves unable to gain any ground. Every time they attempted a breakthrough, the humans were there, outmaneuvering them with precise strikes and clever feints. It became clear that brute strength alone wouldn't be enough to win this war. The last gambit. As the battle reached its climax, the Zorathians grew desperate. Their high command, humiliated by repeated failures, resorted to their most dangerous weapon, an ancient superweapon capable of destroying entire planets. They called it the World Breaker. The Galactic Council's homeworld was in its sights. Evans stared at the tactical display as the massive weapon powered up, her mind racing. They didn't have the firepower to destroy it in time, and the Council's ships were too scattered to launch a coordinated attack. "We're out of time," Lee said, his voice grim. Evans' face hardened with determination. "No, we're not." She quickly devised a plan, one so risky it bordered on madness. "We can't destroy the World Breaker, but we can disable it. If we can get close enough, we can overload its systems from the inside." Lee blinked. "You're talking about a suicide mission." Evans nodded. "If we don't stop that thing, billions will die. We don't have a choice." The Solstice and a handful of human ships broke off from the main fleet, heading straight for the World Breaker. The rest of the Council's forces continued their assault on the Zorathians, buying the humans as much time as they could. As they approached the massive weapon, the Zorathians fired on them relentlessly. One by one, the human ships were picked off, but Evans pressed on. The Solstice took heavy damage, but they managed to slip past the Zorathian defenses, reaching the core of the World Breaker. "Get me a direct link to their systems," Evans ordered, her voice calm despite the chaos. Corporal Lee worked furiously at his console. "I've got it, but we're not going to have long before they figure out what we're doing." Evans nodded. "Then let's make it count." With seconds to spare, the humans sent a massive surge of energy into the World Breaker's systems, overloading its core. The weapon, unable to handle the sudden influx of power, began to tear itself apart from the inside. "Pull us out," Evans shouted as the Solstice raced away from the imploding superweapon. Behind them, the World Breaker detonated in a brilliant flash of light, taking a large portion of the Zorathian fleet with it. The destruction of the World Breaker marked the turning point of the war. The Zorathians, their greatest weapon obliterated and their fleet decimated, finally began to retreat. The Galactic Council's forces pressed the advantage, driving the enemy back across the galaxy. For the first time in years, the galaxy knew peace. As the Council celebrated their hard-fought victory, the humans were hailed as heroes. The species that had once been mocked for their supposed cowardice had not only survived the war, but had been instrumental in saving the galaxy from destruction. Lieutenant Maria Evans, now a legend among both humans and aliens alike, stood at the center of the Galactic Council's chamber, receiving the highest honors. But as she accepted the accolades, she remained humble. "We didn't win this war because we were the strongest or the fastest," she said in her speech. "We won because we adapted. We used what we had, and we found a way to survive. That's the strength of humanity, and that's why we'll continue to stand, no matter what challenges lie ahead." Epilogue. The legacy of the cowardly humans. Years passed, and the story of how the cowardly humans had stepped up when no one else would become legend. Across the galaxy, people began to see bravery in a new light. No longer was it defined solely by physical strength or the willingness to charge headlong into danger. Bravery, as the humans had proven, was about finding the courage to step up when the odds were against you, to fight not with strength, but with ingenuity and determination. The humans, once seen as outsiders in the Galactic Council, were now respected members, their contributions forever etched into the annals of history. They had not only defended their own planet, but had saved countless worlds from the Zorathians' wrath. Lieutenant Maria Evans, now an admiral, continued to serve as a guiding force in the Council's military. Her strategic brilliance was sought after by allies and former enemies alike. Corporal Jackson Lee, having risen through the ranks alongside her, became one of the most respected tacticians in the galaxy. As for Earth, it thrived in its newfound role within the Galactic Council. No longer were humans seen as weak or cowardly. They were recognized for their resilience, their adaptability, and their unbreakable spirit. When the galaxy had faced its darkest hour, It was the humans, the cowardly ones, who had stepped up and shown everyone what true courage looked like. Decades after the war, the galaxy continued to evolve. The Zorathians, now under new leadership, sought peace with the Galactic Council. They had learned a bitter lesson about underestimating their opponents and had come to respect the very species they once thought inferior. On Earth, the memory of the war was kept alive not only in history books but in the hearts of its people. Statues of Admiral Maria Evans and Corporal Jackson Lee stood in the Capitol, reminders of the sacrifices made and the triumphs earned. Schools across the galaxy studied the cowardly human war not as a lesson in military might, but as a testament to the power of ingenuity and resilience. The Galactic Council, once fractured by species-specific rivalries, became more unified than ever. The humans had shown that strength came in many forms, and that sometimes the bravest acts were not those seen on the battlefield, but those carried out behind the scenes in the minds of tacticians and strategists who fought for survival against all odds. The humans had not only survived, they had thrived, and their legacy would inspire generations to come.